Today we'll be going over the best settings that you have to have on for Call of Duty Warzone. I'll be grabbing the top 5 players in the world settings and comparing them amongst each other. Even if you feel like you're a great player, I promise you there's at least one setting in here that you probably don't have on. And at the end of the video, I asked each pro what they think is the most important setting. So wait for that at the end of the video. The first setting we're going to be going over is button layout. Honestly, button layout is something that is pretty much preference to everybody. These are the top 5 players' button layouts. As you can see, almost every single one of these players uses something different. There's a couple settings that I really do think are important. For example, flipped. In my opinion, if you don't have a custom controller, you should definitely think about playing flipped. What flipped does is it changes your R2 to R1 and your L2 to L1. This pretty much makes it so if you're using any semi-automatic guns, you can fire your weapon faster. For example, you don't have to pull your trigger all the way down, come back up, all the way down, and come back up. The time to action on R1 and L1 are significantly faster than R2 and L2. But again, some players don't even use that. For example, Shifty, he plays on completely default. And as the rest of these guys, they all use flipped. One of the biggest differences that you'll see when it comes to button layout is either tactical or regular. The reason why a lot of people use tactical, including myself, is because your right thumb is already on the stick and you can use that to prone shot, crouch shot, or anything like that. This is kind of derived from back in the day in like Black Ops 2, Black Ops 1, when drop shot was the absolute meta. So everybody switched to tactical. Now it's not as important because there's controllers with back buttons or back paddles that you can bind to crouching or proning. At the end of the day, some of the top players in the world use different settings, so use whatever you feel comfortable. But I will note that 4 out of these 5 players all use flipped. So in my opinion, if you don't have a battle weaver with something like smart triggers, then I would probably switch from R2 to shoot to R1 and L2 to aim to L1. Now the second setting is sensitivity. If there's any setting that I want you guys to pay attention to, it's this one. This is probably the most important tip I will give anybody. Stop playing on high sense. A lot of us grew up in the sniping community where everybody played on 20 cents, 14 cents, 15, and we thought that was the way to be the best. And you know, as we got older, we thought, okay, let's continue to use that because that's what I used to use back in the day. But things have changed. If you look at the Call of Duty League, almost every single player, with the exception of maybe 1 or 2, uses a sense from anywhere from 5.5 to about 8.8, with 90% of those guys using 5.5 to 6.6. I know a lot of y'all are gonna say, oh, that's too slow for me, but I promise you the most important thing is centering, and you cannot have good centering while playing on high sense. These are what the top 5 player senses are. For Warzone, I will say things are a little bit different. You can get away with having a little bit of a higher sense. As you can see, Shifty plays on 8.8, Soka plays on 8.8, Diaz and Adrian both play on 6.6, and then Aiden plays on 7.7. In my opinion, this is the perfect cushion between where I think people should be at. Anywhere from 6.6 to 8.8 cents is the perfect spot. So why do people use low sense? The main reason is because centering is king. If you look at the best Call of Duty players in the world, their centering is damn near perfect. In simple terms, to describe centering, it's pretty much to put that center dot of your crosshair where you think somebody is going to be. Now, this might sound easy, but in reality, not many people have good centering. The difference between a great player and a good player is more than likely how good their centering is. A lot of the times, the difference in a gunfight can be determined by having to adjust your aim slightly as opposed to somebody whose centering was on point. Now, some people might use really high sense and then have a really low ADS sense. At the end of the day, the argument is the same. You will always have better centering on lower sense because you don't have to adjust as much as opposed to somebody who's on a very high sense. Speaking on ADS sense, everybody is a little bit different here as well. We have Shifty on 8.8 with a 0.9 ADS sense. We have Diaz on a 6.6 sense with a 1.0 ADS sense. We have Soka on an 8.8 sense with a 0.9 ADS sense. We have Adrian with a 6.6 and a 0.9 ADS sense. And then lastly, Aiden on a 7.7 with a 0.85 ADS sense. In my opinion, ADS sense doesn't matter as much. That only helps whenever you're pre-aiming, and so that way you don't miss as many shots when you're aiming down sight. I play on 6.6 with a 1.0 ADS sense, and I'll be honest, it's all preference, but I will say the golden rule is stay anywhere between 6 to 8 cents. The third setting is the aim assist type. This is the aim assist type that all the top 5 players in the world use right now. As you can see, it's pretty standard. Everybody uses default. Before, back in Modern Warfare 2019, everybody used Black Ops aim assist because it was pretty broken at the time. Then they nerfed it and brought it back down and pretty much reduced it so it's not as crazy anymore. So now 95 to 99% of people all use default aim assist. Nothing to really go over here. You can use Black Ops if you want, but default is better. Now for the next setting, which is actually really important, is the aim response curve. For maybe the last 3 years, everybody has used the same exact aim response curve, which was dynamic. Now things have changed just a little bit. These are the top 5 players and what aim response curve they use. Pretty much everybody uses dynamic, with Soka being the only one that uses linear. I don't want to get into the scientific principle of what this all means, but pretty much it's just the way your aim feels whenever you move your stick. Some people like how fast and snappy linear is, like Soka, but sometimes that comes with a decrease in accuracy. I know players like Diaz and Adrian tried out linear for a bit, thought it was amazing, switched back to dynamic, and realized that they were nerfing themselves. So in my opinion, I would stick to dynamic because of how broken broken it is. I'm gonna be honest, aim assist just feels insane on that, with linear just feeling a little bit too snappy, and it almost feels like you can't really control your recoil as much. Again, I'm not a top 5 player in the world. Soka can use it. Kudos to him. So let's talk about Deadzone. Deadzone is pretty much at what point does your controller register that you're moving your analog stick. In theory, the lower your Deadzone, the less you have to move your stick for your controller input to be detected. And the higher the Deadzone, the more you have to move your stick for your controller input to be detected. So this is what the top 5 players in the world use right now for their Deadzones. As you can see, this is all over the place. This again is also personal preference, but I wouldn't use anything higher than a 5. The only reason why you should be having a really high Deadzone is if you have insane stick drift. Stick drift is when you can put your controller on a table without touching it and your aim is moving by itself because the sensors inside the stick are misaligned or something like that. But long story short, 90% of people just use a really low Deadzone so that way they can turn faster and have a little bit more twitchier movements. Again, a little bit of stick drift isn't too bad, and for me it doesn't affect me, but if your controller is literally doing circles without you having to touch it, then you should either probably get a battle weaver or make your Deadzones like a 20. For here, just be careful on making your Deadzones maybe a little bit too low, because I've tried 0-0 and I'm gonna be honest, my accuracy suffered greatly. As you can see, Shifting Adrian use a 5, Soka uses a 3, and Aiden and Diaz use a 2. Up to you guys, your personal preference, whatever you guys want to do. Now, FOV is a big setting in Warzone. These are the top 5 players FOVs. As you can see, everybody plays on 120 with the exception of Diaz. I play with Diaz every day, so I know why he does it. In his mind, 110 FOV is easier to see players in a huge map like Warzone, but your accuracy doesn't suffer as much and your visual recoil isn't that crazy. He swears by it. I tried it. I thought it was pretty good, but I ultimately went back to 120. In my opinion, I think don't go lower than 110, but I still think 120 is the play. Diaz might just be getting old. 2 other settings you have to have on as well are your ADS field of view and your weapon field of view. Your ADS field of view should always be set to affected. This pretty much makes it so your aim down sight field of view is relative to your regular field of view. For example, you don't want a 120 regular field of view, but then when you aim down sight, it looks like you're on console. Now, finally, your weapon field of view, make sure to put that to wide. So let's talk about some settings to make your movement better. There's really only 2 settings that will apply to your movement, and that's sprint behavior and your slide behavior. So this is what the top 5 players use. As you can see, everybody uses automatic tactical sprint. This pretty much makes it to where every time you move your left stick, you automatically go into a tactical sprint. This reduces the time to have to double click your left stick to pretty much go into a tactical sprint. This setting alone will make your movement 10 times better. It's such a broken setting that all the CDL pro players banned it. Now let's talk about your slide and dive behavior. As you can see, Diaz and Soka use hybrid and everybody else uses slide only. What is slide only and what is hybrid? Slide only pretty much means whenever you tap your crouch button, it automatically puts you into a slide. You cannot dive and you can only slide. Now hybrid pretty much makes it so where you can slide whenever you want to, but also dive whenever you want to. The way hybrid works is you click your left stick and then simultaneously click whatever button you use to crouch. That'll make it to where you dive whenever you want to. So you have 2 options. Don't click left stick and hit your crouch button and you'll slide. Or you could hold your left stick and hit your crouch button and then you'll dive. In my opinion, there is no reason why anybody should not be on hybrid. 1, there is a slight delay when you're using slide only, and 2, why wouldn't you want to be able to dive and slide on command? The only reason why a lot of these top guys aren't using it is just because they're used to using slide only. People like Diaz and Soka swear by it, and I'm telling you right now, I hated it at first, but I got used to it, and there's no way I'm going back. Whether you're a pro player or somebody not advanced, switch to hybrid. It's gonna take some time to get used to. You are going to dive by accident occasionally, but I promise you it's worth it. Graphics settings are very important, and I believe I found the perfect balance between visual clarity but also high frames. I'm gonna show you these. Let me know what you guys think. Setting I want to briefly go over is make sure your world motion blur and your weapon motion blur are set to off, and then make sure you put your film grain all the way down to 0. There's so many times I've seen Twitch streamers do clips and they have weapon motion blur on and their regular motion blur on, and then they have film grain on, and it just is so hard to see. And lastly, I think they added this last year, but pretty much they made it to where your camera movement in first person and in third person is a thing and you can control it now. So make sure to put that at its lowest setting, which is set to 50%. So those are all the settings that I think you need to have, but here are a couple bonuses that I think are really worth having on. So the first one is grounded mantle. This makes it to where you pretty much only have to tap your X once to mantle over something, as opposed to double tapping X. So this has its pros and its cons. The pro is you get to mantle things a lot faster than somebody who doesn't have this on, but the cons is there's going to be a lot of times where you mantle things that you don't want to and it gets you killed. Now, if you can get used to this, it will provide an added benefit to your movement, but I will say it will get you killed sometimes, and that's that I have it on. Another one is parachute automatic behavior. Make sure to have this off. This makes it so where you can get as lowest to the ground as possible and pull your chute, as opposed to the game automatically pulling the chute for you. We call this the bot indicator. So if we see somebody that has this automatically on, we know we're in a bot lobby. Another big setting that I think everybody should have on is prioritize interact. This pretty much makes it so where you don't have to hold your square whenever you're looting chests or reloading or picking weapons up off the ground. You just have to tap it once. And then in some instances where you need to reload but also pick stuff off the ground, you would hold your square to reload but then tap square on the floor to pick up stuff off the ground. I promise you, if you don't have this on, this will change your game completely. Make sure to turn on your armor plate behavior to apply all. This makes it to where when you hold down your triangle, it'll apply every single plate one after the other. When you have apply one, it only applies one plate at a time and you have to keep pressing triangle. This will save you a lot of time in gunfights. Now, lastly is backpack control. I have this set to stick. What this setting does is you have the option to use your stick to navigate your backpack or your directional buttons to navigate your backpack. I personally like using my stick because I don't want to have to take off my left thumb from my stick to move it to the D-pad. That might seem unnecessary for some people, but in my opinion, it makes it that much faster, and that could save me in a gunfight eventually. After learning what every pro player uses, I went and I asked them, what do they feel is their number one most important setting to have? And this is what they said.
It's gotta be your sensitivity, right? Like my bugging, like it's gotta be your sense, bro.
D, in your opinion, what is the most important setting in all of Call of Duty?
Your sense.
And what do you recommend?
Anywhere between 6.6 to probably like 8 max.
Literally what I said in the video. Adrian, I asked everybody the number one most important setting, in your opinion.
Aim assist.
Aim assist? Like the aim assist type?
Dynamic.
Dynamic? All right.
I was gonna say auto tax rate, bro. Is that weird?
That was a good. That's what I was thinking too. I was thinking that too.
Like ATS, bro.
That was a good one.
Gotta be ATS.
What I think is the most important setting in in Warzone or Call of Duty. Warzone, I'd say prioritize interact is the most important setting.
At the end of the day, use whatever settings you feel comfortable with, but I do hope that you learned something today. There's a lot of little settings that a lot of people don't really have on, and I hope I was able to give you a little bit of insight into what these pro players use. If you ask me what's the most important setting out of everything I just said, I would say it's sensitivity. Again, make sure you don't play on too high of a sense, because that's the biggest thing that I feel stops the casual players from getting better. One thing I will say is everybody's different and everybody's brain processes things differently. So don't go and just copy your favorite streamer's settings, but know that there are some settings that players use that could be a benefit to you. Now, let me know if you like this style of content. I would love to get into more tips and tricks from being in the scene for so long. I'll catch you guys in the next one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Peace, baby.